You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it a back day. Yeah, I got game, got in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it turnpike miles. Yeah, it's Google signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock. I be doing big things.
Welcome back, everyone, to the newest edition of Once a Week. I'm Billy Jan Ludis, and as you can see, we have another incredible special guest for you today. He's an incredible facilitator, helping businesses grow by helping their employees grow in a number of areas, which we're going to get into. But he's an incredible coach and keynote speaker as well, holding workshops for companies, but working on the one-on-one level to develop leaders at the root. He's the CEO of Oak and Reeds out in California, which has helped clients such as Nike and even Lyft, just to name a few. But I could go on and on about his accolades, but I want us to dive into it for you so you can really absorb everything that he does, but how he can help you just as much with the impact he is bringing to so many people. Everyone, I give you Dave Collins. Dave, I thank you for giving us the time because you have done so much and you're doing so much, and I can't wait to give that message to people. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, Billy, it's a pleasure to be here. I am happy to be here. It's early on the West Coast, which is good. I'm caffeinated, I'm well fed, and I'm excited to talk about change, talk about improvisation, and talk about some of the work I'm bringing to people, as you mentioned, one-on-one, working with corporate teams, and also just kind of looking ahead to try to figure out what does this next generation of leaders need in the workplace? Because as you probably know, things are changing a lot as far as what's expected, and a lot is expected of managers and leaders. So it's an interesting time to be in the training and facilitation space.
Oh, I'm sure. And you even mentioned before we start recording, like you were just out in Chicago. You're luckily taking a vacation pretty soon, but you've been back to back in the schedule because what you bring to the table is so needed now more than ever. So much like you just touched on how it's such a need, and you bring an actual improv fear aspect, you bring change aspects to people. Tell us about how you bring speaking and messages to these companies and businesses, because every speaker brings their own little flavor, but yours is in such demand right now because we're seeing change happen. What's your outlook on the change that's happening in the business world right now?
So I describe myself as fun, accessible, and practical. And that's the mindset I try to bring to all of my trainings and all my speaking. It's rare that you get an audience in front of you focused for an hour or 2 hours. And some of my workshops are 3 or 4 or 5 hours. And so you have to hit people in a number of different places. You got to make them laugh, got to make them think, got to make them get up and move. You got to make them actually engage with content in order to get anyone to learn. And I think one of the most important things as a speaker or as a facilitator is put yourself in the audience's shoes. Like, would you want to take your course? Would you want to sit through your speech? Would you want to do this exercise or have this discussion? And if the answer is no, don't do it. True. And I think a lot of trainers, a lot of facilitators, and I talk to a lot of clients, they work with a lot of people, and the training's boring. The speech is boring. It feels like it has to hit a lot of these check boxes. And the challenge is for adults who are learning, there's no test, right? So you can't just say, you got to learn this because it's on the test. No one's going to listen. No one's going to want to learn it. So I find humor to be probably the most important thing I bring to the table, because that wakes people up instantly and they go, this is a little different. If I don't listen, I'm going to miss the joke. I'm going to miss the punchline. And that works better than anything.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I love that too, in the sense, comedy, humor, to bring that to the company, bring it to anyone, a client or whoever it is, it breaks the mold. I think that's the thing, especially coming into a business type setting, for whether it's a workshop or a keynote or just a one-on-one type aspect. So many people come in with this stern aspect where this is what it's going to look like. This is what it has to be. And that gets so boring for so many employees. Because like, oh, we have a training today, we're going to go do this. But when someone brings comedy to it or brings something different, that breaks the mold to what they thought this was going to be. And at that point, I'm learning. Oh, I didn't know this was going to be, I didn't know he was going to bring that to me. Yeah. So now you bring them in to the point where whatever it is you're talking about, business related or life related, whatever it is, they're absorbing it so they can begin to utilize it. And I think that's where you have found so much success, because bringing humor breaks the cycle that most speakers have, but you're bringing something different to the table. You're bringing change to the table as you talk about change in the workplace, for that matter.
Yep. Yep.
Right?
And one of the things, so my background is in improvisation and
Mhm.
improvisational theater. I've been doing improvisational theater since I was a high schooler in Massachusetts.
Nice. Yep.
And
Right.
I was lucky enough to have an amazing drama teacher as
Mm.
a 17-year-old who taught me the fundamentals of improv and how fun it is, how liberating it is, and how exciting it is to get up on stage with people that you trust and get up on stage and create something out of nothing.
Mm.
And there is no better thrill or excitement when you create something out of nothing with a scene
Yep.
partner in front of a live audience, and
True.
everyone saw that whole moment get created. And there's
Right.
this wall of laughter as everyone sees the inner workings of it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those magical art forms where it only exists in that moment and then it goes away.
Yeah.
It's not like a stand-up set, right? And
Mm.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions, right? And stand-ups are honing the jokes over and over and over and over. They're fine-tuning it. They're making it a perfect, I've been watching a lot of Formula One. It's a Formula One car where they
Yeah.
are like every little bit, so that when Bill Burr or Kevin Hart gets on stage in front of 10,000 people, they know that they can go 200 miles an hour and it'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
And that's what people are paying for, right? They pay
Yeah.
big money for that. Improvisation is much different, and I'm not sure a good metaphor. I went down the
Oh,
car
of course.
metaphor route.
Yeah.
But
It
improvisation
totally works.
is you're trying to figure it out in the moment, and so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
True.
But that clicking is addictive,
Mm.
and I've been addicted to that for 20 something years.
Yeah.
And I try to bring some of that into my speeches, into my workshops, and get people to feel like when you're really on the same page with
Mm.
someone else and you create that magical clicking moment where
Yeah.
your idea meets my idea and we create something new that's never existed before, that's
Mm.
satisfying and interesting. People love that.
Yeah.
And that can apply to so many different training topics, but just that yes and moment is
Right.
really exhilarating.
For sure. Oh, I love that too. Just that skill of improvising that you learned in theater and everything like that. But I always look at a speaker like, yes, we're supposed to know our material. Yes, we're supposed to guide these workshops and whatnot. And yes, they can get repetitive. But the beauty of holding a workshop or a keynote, and maybe you do this or not, but with me, I love putting the questions back onto the audience members so they can raise their hand, because it puts the speaker on your toes. That's where improvising comes into play. Where I was out in Michigan a couple months ago speaking at a gig, and I didn't know what questions the students were going to ask. Michigan State University, the students were going to ask, but it never throws you off, but it causes you to grow as a speaker. And when you grow as a speaker, that means everyone in that audience just saw you evolve in a way, but they saw a true answer. It wasn't an answer that you've repeated time and time again.
Yeah.
It was exactly what that person needed. So you're improvising on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
As a speaker, I think that needs to be there because it builds a confidence in you, but it builds reality for everyone else in the audience where, oh, wait, I'm part of this. This isn't just something he did every single week. He's doing it specifically for us here in this moment. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
It's just so neat. So I give you so much credit.
It's the difference between going to a movie and going to see a show, a play.
Yep.
It's the difference between seeing a band you love live, even if it's with 20,000 people, and listening on Spotify.
Mm.
That just the promise of something being different or being new is exciting to a lot of people, right? It's just exciting as people because we are, we have evolved as humans to like to be around others and to be craving spontaneity.
Yes.
And so I love that example of, in Michigan where you're asking questions, and I love Q&A because it's such an opportunity to improvise and just bouncing a question back to someone and say, tell me more.
Yeah.
Right? Give me a level deeper on what you're asking. And that gets out of the canned question that they've been thinking about for 20 minutes and going, well, actually, what I really want to know is how do I use this on a date, right? What I really want to know is how do I use this when I'm talking to a professor? And just the second that bounce back, all that layer of presumption and pretension and am I going to look cool or smart goes away, and you're just having a conversation with someone. And people are much more interesting when they're in that mode than
Yep.
when they're in like performance make me look
Yep.
smart mode.
For sure. Oh, I love that. See, now we're getting to my area that I love to speak on because you're breaking the shell with that, whether it's an audience member, Q&A, whatever it is. But I relate very much to what you do as a speaker because you bring something different to the table, your own little flavor to how it comes about. With me, when I coach speak to a company or a business, it's trying to bridge the gap between personal development into professional development. So with those types of questions, you're able to, as you said, you kind of break the shell, you go a little bit deeper. So you get to the reality of who that person is. So then they learn the skill at a deeper level. They learn the answer at a deeper level so they can cement it and then they can start to grow. So you being a coach, let's transition now because I'm assuming that's exactly what you do with your coaching and guiding people to leadership, correct?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I that breaking that boundary of personal development and professional development, I think is critical because I think pretty much any workshop I'm doing, I'm constantly saying you can use this skill outside the office. You
Exactly.
can use this skill with your partner or your
Mm-hmm.
kids or your best friend or whatever. And I think that is really, really important at this moment in leadership development, in training. You know, it's 2024. It's not 1987, right?
Right.
We are not, there is no bright line where you take the suit off and you go home. All of this stuff is mushing together.
Right.
And I think these types of skills, if you want to call them EQ, if you want to call them emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
just plain old self-awareness,
Yeah.
it's needed everywhere. And then
Sure.
there's like the second and third levels of, okay, how do you use feedback in a one-on-one with your direct report?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that's ostensibly why I get a lot of the work to go and speak because
Yeah.
that's on someone's list. But if you level that back up, feedback is one of those skills that really hits to the core of
Yeah.
how do I relate to other people, right?
It's
How do I
true.
talk to a partner? How do I tell a friend like, hey, knock it off?
Mm.
What's the real blocker
Yeah.
there? It's
Right.
not you need a new technique or you need a framework or you need X, Y, or Z for the office. It's I have this deeper challenge.
Right.
Let's start there. Right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that
Right.
because that's
Yeah.
way more interesting.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. And so when you're doing coaching work with individuals, whether it's at a company or in your own right, does that pop up? Are you getting to the root with people? Are you bringing them to a sense of like, all right, what's the block for you as a leader? How does that
Yeah.
pop up for you?
I mean, it pops up. So I really subscribe to the CTI coaching method,
Mhm. Okay.
which, you know, for lack of a better description, I'm not an expert in describing it, but I think there are two, and they coach that there are really two things you can drive towards as a
Hmm.
coach. What do you want to do about it? And how do
Yep.
you want to feel about it?
Yep.
And you can go down either of those roads for any challenge someone is facing.
Mm.
And I think what do you want to do about it is interesting, right?
Hmm.
There's things we can work on as a coach, but I find how do you want to feel about it is almost always where I start
Okay.
because how do you want to feel about this is something people rarely ask themselves in a work environment.
Right.
And it's really hard to do that kind of self-reflection by yourself.
It's true.
And a lot of the most important stuff comes across when someone's talking about how do you want to feel about this. Little small facial expressions, little
Yep.
ticks, little pauses, little moments where you as a coach go, what happened there?
Exactly.
Tell me more. Your
Yep.
face twitched, or you made a look, or you pause, a big sigh. That's the stuff that's just in someone's muscle memory that they don't even notice that they
Yeah.
say that. They do
It's
that
true.
big sigh every time they talk about, Martha from accounting. And you go, there's something there. And you
Yeah.
just keep kind of wiggling your way in.
Yep.
And you figure out, you know what? I got a whole bunch of feelings about this person. Let's
Yeah.
put them on the table and talk about them. And I
Right.
find that fascinating. I find that stuff to be infinitely fascinating.
Yeah. Oh no, I think that's perfect, and that's the mark of a true coach right there. Is you put it back on the person to find their own answer, essentially. And I think that's why, like, I get to coach people in the workplace setting, but also in the personal just as much. So when I'm going through a coaching session with someone and they're bringing up what they're struggling with and whatnot, it's like they're pouring out all the information, and then you just guide them with one question.
Yeah.
And one question leads them back to their self. All right. So self-awareness, as you touched on earlier, begins to grow. All right. And then that leads to another question. And then at that point, they're giving themselves their own answer. That's elevating the person. That's self-improvement, personal development at its finest. But in a workplace setting that you're touching on, that's what I believe in this day and age, as you touched on, change is happening. We need to look more at the person, not the employee. Because if we look at the person, the employee improves. So you have to get to personal development to improve professional development, as we said. When you're coaching at a company or whatnot, what do you see being the, I guess, most hot button topic? What pops up the
Yeah.
most for you that you get called in to work on?
Yeah. So great question. There's a couple, and there's a couple that spring to mind. I think
Mhm.
let's start with the first one that popped in my head. I'm going to be a true improviser and not censor myself.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with the first one.
go for
I
it.
think the most fascinating one right now is the intergenerational workplace. I
Okay.
think right now the range of ages that are working, some
Mhm.
folks in their 70s all the way to 18-year-olds,
True.
let's say.
Yep.
That's a 50-year time span in some
Right.
organizations. And depending on how you want to chop up the generations, that could be 4 or 5 generations. And I put generations in scare quotes because I find that some of the generational buckets have more have more stereotypes than useful
True.
information in
I get
them.
that. Yeah.
So I'm going to stay away from kind of, classifying what a Zoomer does at work versus what a Boomer does at work. I find that to be reductive and kind of stupid, honestly. It's like,
Yeah.
again, good fodder for stand-ups, but not actually emotionally intelligent or useful. But I do think that a lot of factors go into that 50-year time span all
Mm,
working together harmoniously.
yeah.
Because even if you just step back from the workplace and think about what has happened in the last 50 years,
It's true.
it's so much
Yeah.
stuff.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
so much stuff. So if you came of age in the 70s versus the 80s versus the 90s versus the 2000s, your points of view and your historical markers on economic questions, on social questions, on
Mhm.
gender identity questions,
Right.
on racial questions, on class and taxation, and what is worth spending money on and what is not worth spending money on, and what's a good use of time outside the office and what's a bad use of time outside the office. All these kind of fundamental questions about, I'll use the term personal values because I
Yeah.
find that
Right.
to be much more useful.
For sure.
Um, it's no shock that people have wildly different personal values that show up in wildly different ways
Yeah.
in the office.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are not armed with the tools to talk about those differences in personal values in a safe and constructive way.
Right.
And it just creates like unnecessary conflict where two people are talking about two different things
Yeah.
and they think they're fighting about one thing.
Yeah. It's so
And
true.
I just, it's had a lot of workshops and a lot of talks and a
Yeah.
lot of coaching on this exact thing.
Yeah.
And I find it fascinating. I think
For
it's not
sure.
going to go away.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that. I didn't even like. Yeah. We think about that, we see that, but how you just described it goes so much deeper. And I completely agree with you how that is such a hot button topic in the industry. And if a boss or owner is listening right now, look at your own company and think on that. How
Yeah.
do the ages mix together? How do the different demographics mix? How do the different generations mix together, for that matter, as Dave just touched on? Because as like we're all individuals, we all have our own perspective of reality, perspective of the world, perspective of the workplace, perspective of our family, whatever it is. And what I say might be different than what you say, and what you say might be different than what I say, but how we talk about it can be different than what everyone else would talk about it as.
Yeah.
So that could create clash. And if that creates clash in the workplace, all right, well, your results begin to diminish for whatever the outcome is supposed to be. So when that comes up in a workshop, Dave, give us an example that comes up.
Yeah.
You mentioned, say the highest age is 70. Maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe a 7-year-old's there like, oh, how do I continue to connect to the new 25-year-olds that are getting hired? What
Yeah.
comes up? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so it's another great question. I think, first, it's kind of a flip answer,
Mm,
but the simplest thing is go ask them what they're into.
there you
Like,
go.
just
Yeah.
go talk to them, like
Show
go talk
interest,
to them
right?
like they're a person and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, like what kind of stuff are you into? How's work going?
Hmm.
Tell me about what you do in your free time.
Connect.
What do you care about? What are your
Right.
passions?" Right? These are all I'm taking a little bit of a
For
tone
sure.
here. I'm being a little facetious, but I think people forget, like you just said, that they're just human beings.
Right.
They may be 24, right? They may be nervous. You may be
Right.
nervous, but you're not talking to a different species.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of, not to go on a whole rant, a lot
Yeah.
of the media we consume
Yep.
tries its hardest to think of people who have slight differences to us as completely foreign. and
For
completely
sure.
alien to us.
100%.
And so a lot of that gets broken when you just look someone in the eyes and ask them questions about themselves.
Right.
It's really not more complex than that, but I will say that is a hard thing to do, right?
Yeah.
That is a hard thing for someone who may be 40 years difference from someone to say, hey, like, what are you into? Or
Yeah.
how's work going for you?
Mm.
Or what do you care about, right? These are kind of personal questions. So one of the ways I get at that is, when I do workshops on identity or
Mhm.
workshops on creating a sense of belonging, because I think
Right.
about what's the verb, like what's the output we want? We want people in the workplace to
Yep.
feel like they have a seat at the table,
For
right? That when
sure.
they show up, they can be some version of their full self.
Hmm.
I don't believe anyone is their 100% full self at work, right? That would
I
be
get that.
a little bit much. I'm not, right? There's a
Yep.
lot of stuff that stays at home, stays with my buddies, stays with my wife. Like we
Right.
joke, we have jokes we make at home, right?
Yep.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But as much as you want to,
Mhm.
and then the main tool is talking about identity at work. I
Yeah.
think that is the skill.
Right.
How do you make it safe for people to share and ask about other people's identities so they can honestly learn,
Yeah.
and not flip it around and use it as a weapon?
Mm.
That's the key skill. And I love talking about that because I find it to be
Yeah.
fascinating.
It's so
People's
fascinating.
identities, that's what they're about.
Yeah. Oh no, I find it incredibly fascinating just as much because it's interesting. It's how we operate as people. It's how we operate in a workplace. And at the end of the day, that is in itself what brings results to the workplace. How do people operate as themselves in a cohesive unit to make, I don't know, the result, the money, the outcome, whatever it is. So now to put it back onto that with what have been the results from these workshops? Because I sit there and I think, okay, this stuff's a gold mine to me in the sense that makes so much sense. This connects to this connects to this. Is that usually the outcome? Or are there workers, are there employees, like a 70-year-old, you sit there, they're very set in their ways. How they come into a workplace, it doesn't have to be 70 people listening right now. It could be a 55-year-old, could be someone in the upper ranges that have been at this job for longer than 10 years. They're set in their way for this workplace. So when the workplace begins to change, that person that's already been there for so long might give pushback to whatever the change is meant to be. So, Dave, when you're sitting there and maybe, I don't know, employee raises their hand at one of your workshops and like, well, yeah, I know, I completely understand that that's what we're supposed to do. We should go connect to our people, but I just don't want to.
Yeah.
What comes up? Because I find that pops up a lot where people that have been set in their ways for so long, it doesn't have to be work, it can be personal just as much, but they're unwilling to move with the changes that happen in the workplace. How do you combat that as a speaker where change is going to happen? And if the employees don't want to change, is there a specific route to motivate them or is there a different route to speak to them on?
Yeah. So you're getting to the fundamental core of change management, which
Okay.
change management is my background. That's how I
Yep.
started my work as a consultant,
Perfect.
is getting people to change.
Mm.
And I'll give an example. So I was, 22 years old, right out of college, fresh faced, excited. And we were put in the role of doing change management workshops for
Mhm.
federal government employees who we were changing their workspace. So
Okay.
literally moving them out of high walled cubicles into kind of more open spaces. We worked for a workplace design firm.
Okay.
And what I learned is the amount of personal connection people have to the desk they sit in.
Mm.
And that little area in the workplace is like their own little fiefdom, right? You can do whatever you want to me, but I've got this, 8x9 cubicle. This is my world. I
Yeah.
own this. And when you try to get someone to move just out of that into something a little bit more flexible, more tech focused, whatever, there are plenty of benefits.
Yeah.
It did not matter that I was saying, well, there's 9 other conference rooms. There's multiple
Mm.
spaces for you to have meetings. The break room doesn't smell like fish anymore, right? All of these benefits, no one wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
And because what I see this change as is you're taking this from me. You're taking this thing from me, and I don't care what you're giving me. I don't see what's in it. I don't see what's in it for me. All I see is this loss.
Right.
And there's plenty of research on loss aversion, right?
Mm.
Human beings have a much greater emotional reaction to losing something than to gaining something of equal or even greater value. So there's plenty of behavioral economics on that.
Yeah.
So change management is dealing with this intrinsic feeling of loss aversion that humans have. When we grieve we literally go through a grieving process for changes at work.
Mm,
And what I try to coach leaders and managers and just individuals going through change is understand change as a grief process,
yeah.
understand the emotions inherent in that. Don't short circuit that grieving process. It
Yeah.
sounds a little overblown, but let people let go
Yep.
of the old way. Let them process that grief, that
Right.
frustration, that anger, that depression, that woe is me feeling, even if it's, again, even if they're grieving a CRM software,
Right.
even if they're
Yeah.
grieving a method of filing expense reports, or they're
Hmm.
grieving their old cubicle, let them have a grief moment. Let them be
Yeah.
pissed for a day or two,
Right.
and then engage them
Hmm.
in asking and showing what's in it for them, right?
Mm,
What's in it for them in this new way of operating. And if you can do those two fundamental things of change management, give them
yeah.
space to grieve
Yep.
and make it super clear how this new change makes their life better in a way that they care about,
Yeah.
you're going to be in great shape with change.
For
And
sure.
most people don't think that way about
Yeah. It's
change.
true.
They
It's
just say
very
do it.
true.
They just say
Yeah.
do it.
That's gold. That's 100% gold. So if someone's listening right now and they're head of a company or they're the decision maker to, I don't know, maybe bring Dave in and whatnot, do you find that the companies, you were just in Chicago speaking, you've been traveling all over speaking, are there specific types of companies that bring you in and work on this change or all these different areas that you touch on? Or is it all over? Any business can utilize this.
So I'll answer that in a way it doesn't exactly answer your question.
Okay.
And I work with all sorts of companies, right?
Yep.
Small, medium, large. But I find I'm working with companies, and I'm going to borrow a quote from one of my clients, CEOs, Rick
Nice.
Woldenberg, who runs Learning Resources. We were talking about training over
Hmm.
dinner last week in Chicago. And he said a lot of companies have a Tinkerbell problem, like from Peter
Okay.
Pan,
Yeah.
right? With training and people development at large, you have to believe in it for it to
Mhm.
work.
For sure.
You have to believe that Tinkerbell and Peter Pan exist for them to exist.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe in them, you kill them.
Mm.
And I know that's not exactly how the
No.
story goes, but it
Yeah.
kind of is,
Yeah.
where I find myself working with organizations that have a fundamental core value around the idea that people can develop, people can
Yeah.
change, people can learn new skills. And that's something that matters to us as an organization.
Yeah.
And I find myself not working with organizations that ask me, can you give
Mm.
me a precise ROI on a 2-hour workshop on interviewing skills?
Right.
And I say, well, I can give you data on how well people receive this. I can give you data on people feel comfortable and confident using these skills. But I can give you all sorts of data on the workshop. I cannot, with 100% certainty,
Yep.
tell you what the bottom line impact will be of
For
this
sure.
one session. I
Yeah.
just can't, because
I
if
believe.
anyone does say that,
Yeah.
they're blowing smoke up your butt, because you
Yeah.
can't really do that.
For sure.
You kind of got to take that leap at
You gotta
some
take a
point.
chance.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and so I end up working with organizations that have that, again, back to that term,
Belief.
core value
Yeah.
that people deserve to learn in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I don't work
Right.
with other organizations.
For sure. Oh, see that's to me that's perfect because a company that believes in the work but believes in the change and believes in the employee is going to invest in the employee. The businesses that I've spoken for, the workshops I've done and trying to help people in a workshop setting for whatever company or corporation could be, they usually are the ones that want to give back to their employees, which then grows the company. It's not so much, well, if we bring you in, what's it going to be? Like, what is like, what's the price? What's this? What's this? And I'm sitting there, I was like, I can answer these questions, but
Yeah.
here's the meaning behind what we're doing.
Right.
That brings the results. So to get a company that, you know what, we want to make sure we improve in X, Y, and Z, this guy can do it. We're going to bring him in because we know that's what our employees want. That's what they need right now more than ever to guide them through this change. Let's go for it.
Yep.
That's a
Yep.
belief in your workplace.
Yep.
That's not so much an owner looking at a paycheck that, oh, this month we made this month we made this. No, they're like, you know what? We know it starts at the ground level where the employees are. Let's invest back in them so it then grows the rest of the company. So I love that, Dave. I completely agree with everything you said. And to find an owner that is like that for people listening right now, that's what will grow you and grow your employees and grow your company to the highest level. because you start at those root levels, as you touched on. So I love that, Dave. I think that's perfect. Is there anything else you want to add to that? I didn't want to
No,
cut you
well,
off.
I just think I think there are many ways to grow and build a company.
Yep.
And I think what I want to be really clear about is the types of companies I work with aren't just the only successful companies. There are
Yeah.
very successful companies that treat developing people in a very different way, and they've seen wild success.
Mm.
And I think those are companies that instead of hiring me, they're going to buy a box of LinkedIn learning videos and
Yeah.
teach people feedback skills in a much
Yep.
more efficient and
Yep.
cost-effective way. And
Yeah.
that's fine, right?
Yeah.
That works for them. That's going to be fine. It's just a very different way of seeing people development and human resources and
Mm.
growth. Either can work. I'm just not going to work there because I can't compete with videos,
Yeah.
right? It's
I
just
get
a
that.
different thing. And
Yeah.
so I've learned that over the years.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect though. As a speaker, you want the interaction. You want to be
Right.
there with the people. There's, as much as we touched on before, there's an experience to it. There's a moment to it that cements this into the employee's head that they can come back to, which then continue to help them grow and utilize the tools at hand. So I think that's
Mhm.
perfect, Dave. As we know, as we start to transition out of this interview right now, I know that speaking is growing so much for you. Tell us more
Mhm.
about how it's grown, where it's, yes, you're still doing coaching, yes, you're doing workshops, but even keynotes and everything like this. Dive into that for us. Show us
Yeah.
where is speaking grown for you.
So speaking has always been a way I've grown my consulting business. So I
Yep.
speak at learning conferences, at HR conferences, and a lot of that has been, here's a tidbit from my training workshop. Let me give you an introduction to how I like to teach people, how I do workshops on belonging. I do
Mm,
speaking on interviewing, like how to interview for values,
nice.
as opposed to looking for culture fit. So these have always been things I've done over the years as a way to spin up business for workshops and training. Like, bring me in, let's do a longer session, let's
Yeah.
really dig in with your people. I've been getting more and more requests to speak to audiences, 400 people, to really bring some of the higher level skills, specifically
Mm,
around interpersonal and communication skills. So
nice.
two of the workshops that now become speeches are using improv for change
Mm,
and also storytelling for
perfect.
leaders.
Yeah.
And storytelling is one of those workshops, or that I keep speeches, workshops. Storytelling is something that I've found reaches a much wider audience.
Right.
And so a big audience can walk away after 45 minutes with kind of feeling empowered that your own life stories are useful in
Mm,
workplace communication. It is much more interesting to show rather than tell.
yeah.
And I find that's a really big skill, storytelling, that any audience can really dig into. And I get a lot of great feedback. I tell a lot of stories in those
Yeah. Yeah.
sessions too, to kind of show that this is a messaging tool that
Mm,
is only going to become more powerful
yeah.
as we crave this connection to each other. And so I've been really enjoying speaking. And again,
Yeah.
there's a little bit less back and forth, a little bit less improvisation. I got
For
to be a
sure.
little more polished. We got to make sure things are a little more written out,
Yep.
but it is exhilarating to get that message in front of bigger groups. So
Yeah.
I've been really enjoying it.
So that's perfect. I completely get that. And I'm right there with you. Like, it's funny how the speaking world works, where you have workshops, seminars, and then keynotes, where it's like the keynotes predominantly just you speaking.
Yeah.
I love the workshop aspect that you have done for so long. I get to do these just as much, but the interaction piece, it's cemented in. It's just, there's something different about that little piece, but I'm right there with you. The speaking world is different, but it's
Yeah.
incredible to be able to captivate an audience and share a positive message or impact them with a message that will last
Yeah.
longer than just the 45 minutes or an hour that you're there. And I think that's the
Right.
beauty of being a speaker. You leave your impact, you leave your footprint wherever you go.
Mhm.
So I give you
Yeah.
so much credit for that, Dave, because you've grown exponentially in the entire speaker world as you continue to grow in the speaker world. But you bring so many great messages to people that are needed. So as much as you touched on, there's improv, there's change, there's storytelling, there's all these different leadership aspects. Is there one topic that you're most passionate about that you get called in all the time? Like, Dave brings it when he talks about this. Like, all of them, you bring so much too. But is there one
Yeah.
that's like kind of closer to your heart?
I think it's using improvisation for change.
Yeah.
I think it's what
Hmm.
we've been talking about this
Right.
whole time. It's I think learning these fundamental skills of how to live and thrive in uncertainty, and how to
Right.
deal with the emotional challenges of living in
Mhm.
that uncertainty, and then how to help other people go
Yeah,
through a change using some of these improvisational tools, which really all they're doing is getting yourself to look outside of yourself,
for
looking
sure.
for offers and ideas from others and building off of them.
Yeah.
And it's a way to make change something collaborative where you don't
Mm,
recede into yourself and become, go into your turtle shell.
right.
You look outwards and go, what can I yes and? What do I
Yeah.
like other people doing here? And how can I build on that?
Yeah.
And it's a much more active approach to
Mm,
change as
yeah.
opposed to just waiting for a leader or waiting for the world to tell you how to do it,
Mm,
which isn't going to work
I get
because
that.
no one's checking for you. You got to figure out how it's going to work for you.
Yeah.
And I love bringing that message to speeches, to different audiences, because I think people walk out with a much clearer sense of purpose to
Yeah.
figure out how am I going to make these changes work for me. So it's
For
like
sure.
selfishness with purpose.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. It grows the awareness of the individual to be able to see these deeper areas. That's powerful, Dave. I think that's incredible. So, in all these different aspects, tell them, where can people find you right now? I know you got a new speaking website. I know you got your Oak and Reads one just as much.
Yep.
Put it all out there. Social media is everything
Yes.
right now.
So find me first and foremost on LinkedIn, Dave
Mhm.
Collins. I'm right there. I'm posting all the time, new content, new stuff. So definitely find me on LinkedIn. My website for speaking, davekcollins.com. Got detailed descriptions of these talks I've been talking with you about.
Yep.
And then also my training business is Oak and Reads, Reeds, oakandreads.com,
Mm,
where that's where you'll find all the information on these workshops that I bring to
awesome.
teams and organizations. So for an offsite or for a more extended, leadership training program, first time manager training program, all the details there.
Nice.
And then, yeah, reach out. You can find my
Yeah.
email all over the place.
There
Reach
you
out
go.
on LinkedIn. I have an Instagram page, Oak and Reads. Come talk to me about this stuff, because even if we
Yeah.
don't work together, as you found, Billy, I like talking about this. So
It's
I'm
important.
giving out
Yeah.
all sorts of free ideas. That's always an open door, because I think the more
Nice.
we spread these messages, the more people get interested to do work with us.
Right? Oh, 100%. It's the collaboration that you touched on before.
Mhm.
It brings you directly into the room with whoever it is through all those direct messages or emails. So I love that. Guys, all of his links are going to be in the YouTube description. They're going to be in the credits of this video. So you can go right there and find him. You can reach out to him. But Dave, one last question before we close this whole thing out. What is a lasting message you want to leave with people using everything we touched on? Maybe something we didn't touch on, but what's a lasting impact you want to leave before we close this whole thing off?
Yeah, I think, I had an answer at the beginning of today, and it kind of shifted. I think, talking about those identity aspects at
Mm,
work, I think one of the simplest things you can do is check in with people at the beginning
mm,
of meetings.
awesome.
Ask people, what's on your mind today? That simple question, what's on
Right?
your mind today, is how we get at creating a sense of belonging for people
Yeah.
that see through a level, not just how are you? How are you gets, I'm fine. What's
Yeah.
on your mind today? You learn about a person. And that can take 30 seconds at the beginning of a Zoom
Sure.
meeting. It can take 1 minute at the beginning of an in person one on one. And it opens the door for people to share what they're thinking about. So
Mm,
again, that one thing, what's on your
yeah.
mind today? If we can start asking that question more, you're going to learn a
Yeah.
whole lot more very quickly.
That's awesome. Oh, that's a perfect period to put on this interview, Dave. I appreciate that. Dave, I appreciate your time so much. I think you bring so much to the table as a speaker, whether it is a keynote, whether it is a workshop, whether it is a coaching aspect. You prove to us in this interview that there is so much knowledge, there's so much wisdom there to help companies, to help individuals grow in the awareness piece, in the belonging piece, in the collaboration piece, in the change piece. I could go on and on. But you're one of the best in the business for what you do, because you can only bring you to these areas, and that's what people need. The messages that you're bringing to people are the impact that are needed now more than ever, as you're seeing the industry change now more than ever. So I say that to you, Dave, to, yes, prove like, hey, you're the guy for people to go to. But I say that to listeners, I say that to viewers right now more than ever. If anything sparked you in this video for your company, for yourself, maybe, as Dave touched on, reach out to him. Look at his websites, check out what he's doing. And maybe, that turns into something where Dave can come help you and your company. Maybe that just turns into nothing, but at least you acted on that one ability right there. You say, you know what? When he was talking about collaboration, I really need that now more than ever. And you just learn from that one piece. Maybe that's all you needed. But go check Dave's websites out. Go see what he's all about, because I'm telling you, just in this one interview, we only breached the surface. I guarantee you Dave brings so much more to audiences, and I got to go find all these clips. I got to see everything, because there's so much knowledge in this, and this is only a quick interview. This is a one-on-one basis for you listening right now. But for an audience, it goes so much deeper, and I can guarantee you that. So Dave, I thank you so much for being here. Viewers and listeners, I thank you so much. Please like this message on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up down below. Share this message to someone who you feel needs to hear it, or share it to someone who could, in fact, bring Dave or even myself in to speak to the audience that is needed. Because that's you reaching out a hand and helping one person, which is a domino effect and could help an entire audience of people. Share it to them, not to help us, but to help them. At the end of the day, that's why we have this channel, is to help people. Reach out a hand and impact someone with this message just as much. And please subscribe to Once a Week if you have not already. That number is going up every single week, which means we're reaching people. We're helping people now more than ever. Become a part of it, guys. See every video that we post every Sunday. If you're in need of a coach, whether it's in the business setting like Dave or me in the personal setting, go to BillyGLifeCoaching.com. You can set up a free call with me. I'm right there for you. But after saying all that, Dave, once again, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate all the messages. I appreciate all the information. You're helping people in an incredible way. I'm so grateful that you were able to share some of that today. It's awesome.
It was a pleasure being here. Great conversation, and more to come.
Exactly. More to come. I hope to have you on again. Perfect. Have a good one, guys.
You know I've been around and doing it, but now it's my time to shine and start proving it. I'm losing it, I'm moving it. The city is where I'm made, Bostonian flow, I kick it back there. Yeah, I got game, God in a fan way. We the city of the champs, every sport we play. Spit wetter than the harbor, yeah, I'm flowing like the Charles. I be speeding on this beat, call it Turnpike Miles. Yeah, it's Google signing on, John to the Hancock, and I'm always key, I'm ready to unlock.